Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy spent this week pleading with allies to keep helping with the fight against Russia's invasion.
We greatly appreciate the vital assistance provided by the United States to Ukraine to combat Russian terror, really terror.
Thursday, he was in Washington in part to try and convince some lawmakers on Capitol Hill to approve more aid packages. But his visit to the U.S. was more than just a call for money. Kathleen McInnis joins me now. She's the director of the Smart Women, Smart Power Initiative at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And she recently returned back from Ukraine. It's so good to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. First, if you could tell us, what were President Zelensky's main priorities as you see them heading into this week in the United States?
President Zelensky's main aim for this trip was to remind the world and Washington about the stakes of war in Ukraine and that Ukraine is involved in an existential war with Russia. From a distance, it's easy to forget the stakes and how brutal the war is, but it's atrocious on the ground, and Zelensky's here to remind people of that.
Was he effective? Do you think he was effective?
I think so. He's also made the point that, and countries, by the way, around Central and Eastern Europe are also noting that Russians' neo-imperial ambitions, they won't stop if Ukraine loses. Other countries, including those in NATO, are likely to be in Russia's crosshairs if Ukraine fails.
Ukraine's counteroffensive has made little progress recently. Has that, do you think, impacted morale from what you even saw on your recent trip?
Actually, quite the opposite. I saw Ukrainians with a fierce determination and will to fight. And, the counteroffensive has been slower than many people in the West expected. But let's not forget that the Russian military is, despite their failings in Ukraine, it is one of the most preeminent militaries in the world. And they're in entrenched defensive positions. That's hard to dislodge that kind of enemy under any circumstances, and particularly in Ukraine. So just because it's been slow doesn't mean that they won't be effective. I went to a suburb outside of Kyiv called Irpin, and I saw where 11 soldiers and 200 townspeople, including the landscaper and cable guy, repelled Russian forces for a month on their own. This is a country with will to fight.
And when you think about that and this resolve, if you could, how do people perceive Zelenskyy? Because again, he comes here, he's pleading his case, trying to make sure that his cause stays on the minds of world leaders. But how is he perceived in terms of what he's been able to do from his own people?
Actually, the impression that I got was overwhelmingly positive, particularly because he has been very forceful about how Ukraine, to win this war, has to regain all of its territory pre-2014. And everybody that I talked to, which were dozens and dozens of people when I was there, everybody said that the regaining of Ukrainian territory to the 2014 position, so basically getting Crimea back, is an essential part of any peace plan or any enduring peace settlement that occur. And again, because he is underscoring that with both domestic and international audiences, that's going quite a long way.
Poland announced on Thursday that it would no longer send weapons to Ukraine. Is that possibly will we see a domino effect because of that? Or how much does that really hurt the effort by Ukrainian people to fight the Russian invasion?
It is really unfortunate that this is bubbling up at this particular time. Ukraine needs grain exports to keep its economy alive and get tax revenues up, and therefore keep the government functioning. But there are, price competitions and grain commodity competitions with Polish farmers, and there's a Polish election. So there's all these sorts of bubbling issues that are happening at the time surrounding the Ukrainian grain issue. Poland has recently walked back, in the past couple of hours, I believe, walked back their statements. Actually, there is no doubt that they will continue to be a major transshipment point at Zhezhel across the border for weapons into Ukraine, and they will continue to support Ukraine. They've also absorbed upwards of 1 million refugees into Polish society, so they've done a lot. But it really is unfortunate timing that this kind of issue over grain is coming up now.
Yeah. So many issues, so many
Yeah.
problems, really, when you think about the impact across this country, across the world, because of what's
Yeah.
happening there. Kathleen McInnis, thank you so much.
Thank you.